Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of The Reach. My name is Matt Bressington. Today, I am, of course, joined by Parker Rogers, my excellent co-host. We're just going to get straight into the Reaches. Week 2 of the ELF has concluded. Parker, would you like to go first?
Yeah, this week was crazy, but not as crazy as week 1. There were some very interesting games, some really good games. Shout out to Vienna. That was an absolutely crazy game against the Berlin Thunder. I mean, almost had the comeback. But anyways, my first reach is that Tony Tate is an early runner for MVP. Already in week 2, he has 5 receiving touchdowns and 2 or 3 rushing touchdowns. I think this past weekend he had 4 total, with 3 receiving and a rushing, or 2 and 2. I don't quite remember. But at the rate that he's going and the team that he's playing with, and people doubting Roclaw so much at the beginning of the season, to them signing Vitali, then coming in being 2-0 after week 2, I think as the best player on the team, as a role player, as a standout, as a star, one of the top receivers, the upper echelon of receivers in the LF, he is in a prime position to make a running for MVP if he keeps continuing on the way that he's going. Now, he's not the best receiver, Matt. You and I talked earlier about the Dragons receiver, Lundstrom.
Lindstrom, yeah, Theodore Lindstrom, currently leading the league. I'll get to him in a minute.
Yeah, so he's the number 1. But if Tony Tate continues on the path that he's taking with the team and story that he has, stories are always really important in deciding these things. He could be the MVP. So that's my first reach.
And we've seen obviously, we've had 2 years. Madro London got the MVP in the first year for his 2,000-yard season. John Shelton got MVP last year. Pretty close 1-0 between him and Edwards and Tonga. Kind of take your pick. I think most people kind of go split between the 3, but yeah, I mean, it would be cool to see a receiver win it. I don't think we've even seen that in the NFL, have we? Not that I can recall. I know a kicker won it in like the 80s, but that's pretty much as far back as I can think.
The last MVP that I remember that wasn't a quarterback, honestly, is Adrian Peterson.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So maybe if we get
the MVP. So I don't want it to just be centered to a quarterback award.
I agree. Because I think that in my reach here is that Silas Nisata is the most valuable player for his team in the league. Right? So if he isn't in that team, they're worse than the Enthroners at this point. Like, he is killing it. He's second in the league for receiving. And he is technically a running back, but he has, like I said before, when they list him as a wide receiver, he's going to play all over. He's only got about 49 rushing yards, but receiving, he was the only player that scored against the Raiders last week in their loss. And their defense showed something, but their offense hasn't showed much without him. And so I think that in terms of pound for pound value, he clears everyone in terms of what he does for his team. Like, who else? Without him, they're done. But if you take a player from, say, like Strong out of the Raiders, they still have a major receiver core. If you take Chad Jeffries out of the Ravens, they've got Tommy One, they've got Markel Castle. You take Helbing out of Vienna, they've still got Pajarinen and Weston Carr and all these defensive pieces. So, like, I don't really see anyone in that team that is equal to Silas.
I like that take. I think there's a difference when it comes between like role players and key players, and Silas is definitely a key player, and without him, team would definitely not be the same.
No, they would be bottom feeders, and they got a really good coaching staff. So it's a slow start, very, very slow start.
Reach number 2. I could get hate for this one. This could get on people's nerves. Now,
what we like.
That's why it's the reach. That's why I call it that. The Prague Lions have a top 7 defense. Now, hear me out.
Okay.
After week 2, they've only allowed 41 points. And that doesn't always go on the defense. This past weekend, there was 2 touchdowns off of blocked punts. That's special teams. I know special teams sometimes can't get counted into defense, but that's not the defense's problem. The defense had a goal line stand. The defense forced turnovers. The defense forced 3 and outs over and over again. Prague does not have a bad defense. The problem with Prague is not in their defense. In fact, Dan Dish is one of the best defensive coordinators that I would say has passed through Europe in the past 10 years. You know, he's a former Division I coach. He coached at Southern Miss. He coached at Florida. He coached at North Carolina. He coached in Germany. Now he's in Prague. So the problem with Prague isn't the defense, it's the offense. Play calling. Play calling is subpar at best. I wouldn't even go as far to say that the play calling is mediocre. But Prague does have a top 7 defense. I mean, when you look at the D line, constantly getting pressure. Tomasz Pazorek having a pair of sacks on the day, I believe. Tackle for loss over and over again. You look at the tackling technique by their corners. Speedy, goes down low, goes for the legs, takes the legs out so they can't do anything. Always shedding blocks. So what you're taught to do, if a receiver's engaged on you, shed blocks. Linebackers flying all over the place. Prague does have a top 7 defense, in my opinion, and their play through the past 2 weeks has been enough to prove that. And it's not a problem in Prague with the defense, it's a problem with the offense. So don't count their defense out. There are some huge, and I'm talking huge playmakers on their defense. And they just brought in the former Rams corner
Isaac.
They brought in Isaac to go along with Lewis from Alabama, the former walk-on at Alabama. So they have a strong DB core. They have a strong D line. Linebackers are good. It's all the pieces are there. The coaching is there. Prague has a top 7 defense. I rest my case. That's my reach.
I don't think that's an unreasonable reach at all. I think you've made the points. I like the signing of Isaac. They lost their linebacker for Farlard to the CFL draft, but they seem to have replaced him pretty well in strengthening up the DB core because, like you said, DBs and linebackers and the D line are doing their job. They had a goal line stand last week against the Kings as well. The offense gave the ball up and they had was it a pick that led them up to like the 5-yard line or something, and they held out? Can't recall specifically, but
Lewis had a pick. He did have a pick. I think it was that pick that they drove and then either scored or stalled on. I can't remember.
Yeah, and they had another goal line stand during that one, so they are definitely performing well. From defense to offense, though, we went from one of the best defenses, and now we're going to the best offense, the best, no question.
No question.
It's Boston Dragons, isn't it? It is. I've been critical of them all week. I've been critical of them for weeks, like months even. I'm 180 in. I was wrong. I'm seeing the light. I'm feeling a fire. I'm all the Dragons at the moment. They have no sacks allowed for the first 2 weeks. Connor Miller was the MVP this week. Landstrom is leading a receiver, and he's playing brilliantly. Their run game is solid. We've seen it mixed in. The play calling is brilliant. It's creative. They're mixing up the routes. They're getting every receiver involved. They're getting the running backs involved with the game, the offensive line. Considering Zach Edwards took 88 sacks while at Barcelona, which was more than double anyone else, and then for them to bring in a whole new offensive line and no one's grazed Miller, it's pretty brilliant. And I think that come the end of the year, maybe we'll see it kind of plateau slightly, but overall, right now, they're the best offense in the league. And I don't have any reservations about
that. I have nothing to say other than they have one of probably the best QB of the year so far, Connor Miller. One of the best, top 3, definitely top 3. Statistically, the best wide receiver who previously ranked as what tier was he on?
Tier 3, I think I had him in. I'll have to rewatch, but he's rocketed up there.
He was a tier 3 receiver, but he's completely skyrocketed and changed 2-0. I have nothing to say. I think
I think that he is. What's your third take?
They were very hyped coming into the season. New team, new face, new country. Some of the familiar faces that we've seen around the league. Zachary Edwards. Paris is not living up to the hype. They are not as good as people made them out to be. They will not be as good as people make them out to be, and they will have a average season at best. There was a poor showing this weekend in Paris, not just the game, but also with the fans. Huge stadium. Now, Matt, I know you love
Stade Amboise. My least favorite stadium, the Stade Amboise. Yeah, they disappointed.
It was very disappointing, a big letdown. I think over the course of the first 2 weeks, that's probably the biggest letdown of the first 2 weeks. Obviously, Zachary Edwards, who was previously with Barcelona, coming over to Paris, and look, honestly, I just expected more. I expected a higher scoring game. I expected more explosive offense, and I expected more of a shutdown defense with everybody that they were signing and bringing in, and how much hype was created around this team. Granted, it's only been a week for them. We'll see.
But their offensive line's been atrocious, really bad.
I've got nothing like overly positive to say that other than yeah, they're not bad.
Yeah, I mean they're not. We I think everyone kind of had them as a top 5 team, and they've been middling. You know what I mean?
Average at best. That's what I said. Average season at best. Paris is not living up to the hype.
You know who is living up to the hype? Ryan Fire.
Ryan Fire. They are on fire right now.
They are. They're going undefeated. They're going undefeated. They are washing everyone in the most competitive, or like maybe the highest ability conference. They have Paris, outperformed Paris by a mile. Centurions, who everyone has been very impressed with, but you know, let's be real, they're not contenders. Galaxy dealt with them with ease, made it look easy. 2 defensive touchdowns on that day. And I know that Sullivan's now out, so even worse for them. Hamburg washed them out of the way. Not a problem. I know they got a little bit close at their end, but another defensive interception and another pick 6 for Amari Williams, the best DB in the league. And they have their QB and their offensive line, who is the best offensive line in the league. And if anyone wants to question my top 5 now, please look at that clip I shared on Twitter, where he has about 7 seconds uninterrupted because of his great offensive line that I wrote about. Their centers are really good. Their tackles are good. Their guards are good. Their weapons on offense and Robitaille and Mulhunwy are brilliant. Their running game's working. Clark's working. Their linebackers are all on fire. Their D-line, Alessandro Fernandez is getting everything's great. And they are taking everyone. They're undefeated. They're going to go to the final, going to win without losing their game. I'll go one step further as well. They won't even. I'm going to say in the final, if they do get there, they're going to wash 14 plus points. Easy. They're killing the league.
In the finals.
They're going to make the final.
They have been really good. They played in front of 32,500 people.
They did.
In Hamburg and came out with the win, convincingly with the win on the road against a tough opponent.
A tough opponent who's trying to run a revenge tour, by the way. Like they lost to Panthers. They were coming in to, wow, we got to prove who we are. And then they get walked out of their building again. Tough. And that's why they're going undefeated. They're going to win the league and they're not even going to make it look even competitive. And I think it's great to have a dominant team personally, but I think they are going to win without issue this season. And that concludes our 3, right? You got your 3 in, I've got my 3 in. I think that we leave it to the fans, see who they think has done best, see if they have any more ones they can outdo us with. I'll be Matt Bressington with my excellent co-host Parker Rogers, and we shall see you for the next installment of The Reach. Thank you. Goodbye.